Howdy, guys. Attorney Walter. Now, I wanted to take a moment real quick to let you know I am not feeling super great today. I actually had a little bit of food poisoning. But remember, please, if you enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and leave 5-star reviews. How to leave 5-star reviews in the bio area below. Now, let's get right into this video. A lot of people reached out over the past couple of weeks and said, can you just summarize the big problems that are going on with the Social Security Administration, Social Security benefits, Social Security retirement benefits, disability benefits, SSI, SSDI, auxiliary DAC benefits, etc.? Because a lot of people feel like there's so much going on in my videos, and there's so many videos that they don't really have a good understanding as to what it all comes down to. And I said, yeah, you're right. That makes total sense. I should summarize it down as to the top 5 issues that people are facing right now when it comes to Social Security benefits, whether in the retirement disability arena. Howdy, Garden. Howdy, Deb Carter. Howdy, Love Pugs. Pissed off man. Howdy, howdy. So I want to go through basically the top 5 things, and then kind of have a 6th thing that I think is something relevant to what's going on in the future. The first thing I'd like to go into that I think is the most horrific thing that's going to be happening for the disabled is the COLA 5.9 issue. As we approach, and I know you guys aren't thinking about 2023, but as we approach, and remember, we're like midway through March. We're like, coming up on April pretty soon. But the bottom line is we're likely to see another giant COLA increase for 2023. And President Biden has not released information, although he has started to hint at that he wanted to do more for the disabled, mentally speaking, like he wants for those who have mental impairments. He wants to do massive funding for those, but that does not mean more money directly into the pockets of those who are disabled and or retired. That means more money to school therapists, training more people to be in that industry, etc. So as a result of this situation, the problem is we're not seeing him kind of coming forward and being direct with making, the SSI promises and Social Security 2100 promises, where he was going to increase benefits to make it so that people could live, better. And here's kind of the bottom line. The problem with COLA is that it's essentially a one-shot gig. That's what you get. It doesn't change. It doesn't modify as the year continues. If it gets really bad, it doesn't change. The thought process through this was that essentially Biden would go ahead and do a 4th stimulus to help, basically boost what people have to pay for things. He hasn't done that. The only 4th stimulus that I know of that exists, and I have more videos on this coming out, is the one where I'm physically giving away a 4th stimulus to somebody. Somebody's going to win $600 on July 4th. And we have more rules that are coming out with that and how to apply and all that stuff. So the bottom line that I just want to make very clear here is that the major problem that maybe we need to adjust as a system, as a Social Security Administration, is instead of just having a 5.9 COLA that is constant through the year, maybe having something that moves up and down as it's needed based on what the market does each month. There's a problem with that, though. You'll start to see the government playing with that to go ahead and give you even less per month, and that becomes even scarier. The 5.9 we now know is significantly under what the costs are to be able to survive. The SSI people, like I made a video before, have essentially become this new homeless generation that is either in some sort of government housing or looking to get into government housing because they just can't afford getting a buddy deal anymore from the private sector for housing. So as a result of that, the problem is this. We don't have a good plan for rising costs and meeting those costs for using the COLA system. A lot of the metrics that they talk about are switching the analysis over to the CPI-E system, which is basically where they look at elderly people and the elderly people and how they spend, and using that metric to give more of a percentage. However, that percentage was actually lower than the standard they're using right now for 2022. So the thing is this, we don't have a good system. We don't. This is one of the most major, it is the most major problem, because you're going to see a lot of Social Security, disability insurance, retired, and SSI people being completely broke and having to have a lot of chats with the power company, having chats with the water company, having chats with their rental group, and all those things. There's another problem too, which is that a lot of these groups out there that have funded buying these motels to assist people with allowing them to basically live in a cheap room, they only take a percentage of what they get per month, as opposed to just like, here's the amount. It's only a percentage that they take. The problem is that a lot of those groups are now looking at the financial aspect of this, saying, well, these disabled and retired people, they don't make enough with the percentage that we take. We're going to have to boost the percentage. or they're saying we're going to convert this into an actual hotel, hotel or motel. So there's the problem there as well. So kind of the bottom line is that the major number one thing is the 5.9 increase, because having a bunch of starving disabled people and retired people living in America is obviously not an appropriate means for the wealthiest country on earth to be promoting how it has, presented liberty to its masses. Number two on the list, which I think is very important, it's not as important, but still very important, is requesting medical records via high tech or HIPAA. Back in the day, 4 or 5 years ago, I was one of the lead people who basically was fighting for the rights of Health and Human Services to allow companies to purchase records on behalf of people at a very cheap rate, so long as they were purchased digitally. They sent us an email, they sent us a disk, they sent us a drive, sent us an email, whatever. The new problem is that HHS was a couple of years ago, like 2 years ago or whatever, beaten up by some very, very high-end attorneys that were hired by Ciox as a medical company. And Ciox is a third-party distributor. So you have a hospital, Ciox attaches to the hospital lets them access their medical records, and then Ciox basically sends out the medical records on behalf of the hospital, thereby getting rid of the hospital's medical record division. And as a result of that, or at least reducing it, and as a result of that, the problem is that Ciox, with their millions and millions, got really top-notch attorneys to go after HHS, and HHS has gov attorneys, and not that they're all, there's some really great ones, but there's a difference between Top Gun private field versus gov. You can argue either way, but there is a difference, and the result of it is that unfortunately, Ciox beat HHS. So now what happens is when you want to buy records, if you want to buy records on your own and you use the wrong piece of paper, you could be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars for the exact same thing digitally that would cost you like $6.50. So what's happening is we're seeing a problem with industries trying to manipulate what should be a basic right of people. The basic right is that people should be able to buy the medical records very cheaply, digitally, etc. We don't have that perfect at this point as an industry. So over the next couple of days, I'm going to upload to basically a post for this channel to give every single human being who watches my videos or subscribed the directive letter that we use, so that you can actually use going forward to buy your records if you want to, very easily, this document. I'll show you how to fill it out. I'll do a video on it. Instead of having to pay, let's say you had 400 pages of medical records at your local hospital. Well, that would be about $415 to $425 if you use the hospital's HIPAA, right? That's what they would charge you to buy those records. If you use this directive letter, it'll be around $6.50, maybe $10 around there. I'm going to release to you guys what the law firm uses, so that you can go and buy whatever records you want going forward using this sheet. It's simple, it's within statute, and it's my gift to you guys. There you go. So that's issue number two, is that we need to get people used to the idea of buying the records, and we need to get people used to the idea of being able to buy them digitally and at a cheap price. Strawberry wine, very nice, $17, $5. Thank you, good sir, I appreciate it. Thank you. So basically, let's go on to issue number three. There are deeper investigations going on all the time now. People used to fashion in their head this ideology that when the Social Security Administration would investigate them for having disability benefits, whether or not they're still disabled, like, are you disabled, are you not? That if you got a short form, life is great. If you got a long form, they should be very afraid. The reality is not so much the same now. And I want to go through this because I think it's important. Short forms, yes, it's still a quick little analysis, yes. But the Social Security Administration is becoming significantly more involved with high-tech investigations because they're attaching to local investigators that basically create these big write-up reports. And that's exactly what you would see from the FBI, what they saw the person doing when they tailed them, what kind of footage they got from online, what kind of things they collected from statement witnesses, etc. It's the same thing as what you would see the FBI do. And as a result of that, This happened because a lot of police officers, a lot of firefighters during 9/11, unfortunately, they frauded the system and said that they all had PTSD. And then they got their pension, and then they got their Social Security benefits, and they just did their life, and that was their life. They didn't have to go to work anymore. Unfortunately, that whole big thing created this massive, giant, just explosion of fear among the Social Security Administration. 2012, 2013 era, they did a lot of investigations into it, larger federal claims into it, and as a result, they have become more technologically advanced with tracking people, with reviewing essentially. And that's the thing, is a lot of you guys don't realize, but they're tapping into investigators, and the investigators use technology that may one day become unethical, but is today not unethical. That may one day become inappropriate to use to investigate somebody, but is today still appropriate and legal to use. So, for example, like if you were to post a photo on some website anywhere online, this system would be able to search, the dark web, your Facebook, your Twitter, whatever, and find your photo in that website. Whether you posted it or somebody else posted it, they're able to pull the file and search the metadata to see exactly when it was posted, when it was likely created, all those things. So the point here is they're becoming significantly more advanced in their technological investigation abilities. And here's the reason why. A lot of people were writing, well, this is how you get all the people that are frauding the system. And I agree, you have to investigate people. All for it. There's fraud. I agree. But I think we would all also agree, maybe not, but I think most of us, most of us would. You can take every single disabled person on disability benefits on their best day, record a video of them on their best day, and use that as proof to show that they don't meet the severity requirements, the vocational requirements, the grid out requirements, or the CAL requirements. So in my position with this whole thing, my feeling is that there needs to be a system in place to restrict or at least review how CDI units are being used, how the Office of Inspector General is utilizing them going forward, what are the expectations for the technology that they're going to be using. None of this stuff is really released to the people who are basically, getting these claims of fraud brought against them. And I don't think that's right, because I feel like people deserve to have the right to know how they're being investigated. And a lot of people think, for example, that, they're investigating by just, asking their doctor how bad they are. It's not like that anymore. It was 20 years ago. It's not like that anymore. Now they're able to, track you, trace you, all that kind of stuff. So that to me is number 3 as the biggie issue. Number 4, transfer of wealth from boomers reaching end of life for the disabled. I think there's another problem too, which is that the disabled tend not to inherit significant amounts. As the generations that are passing away transfer wealth to the generations that are still alive. This is something nobody's talking about. There's no single news source online that has gone into this. I'm hoping to do more on it going forward in the future, because I think it's important. A lot of people who are disabled rely on some extra form of cash to come at some point to allow them to get out of the situation that they are in. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about that. The first time that ever really came up as like a conversation piece was when the stimulus payments started coming out, and those were fast gone. It's because it wasn't anything. 1,200, 600, 1,400. That's nothing. I mean, nowadays it's literally nothing. It's like hardly any money at all. So, and some would be like, well, that's a lot. It's actually not. Imagine if you'd gotten the stimulus payments of 5,000, 2,500, and 10,000. That would have been something that would have changed the face of America. So I guess the thing that I want to point out here is that when the generations pass wealth going down the line, because one generation passes away and then the next generation basically comes into plan. I gotta get Sweetie over here, or at least Shadow. Come here, Shadow. So what's happening with that is this: the problem is that I have to throw a pen over there. The problem is that, unfortunately, a lot of these individuals, many of the disabled kids' parents, for whatever reason, I don't know why, when I work with the homeless and the low income, the amount of funds that these individuals are receiving from the parents that are passing away basically is always significantly less. I haven't done a full study as to why that is, but what I've realized is that, parents become highly reliant on their kids as the parents get older. Parents have less funds, so the kids have to kind of help, the parents, etc. And as a result of that, the disabled children are often ill-equipped without, money, and ill-equipped without movement, and ill-equipped without mental capabilities to assist their parents. And as a result, the parents have to hire other people to do things, which ends up taking a lot more funds and reducing the overall amount that the parents have. So, that's kind of the bottom line here, is that I think a big problem that we're going to be looking at that no one is talking about, not the commissioner of the SSA, not basically President Biden, nobody is talking about this, not even Bernie Sanders, is that disabled people tend to inherit significantly less. And that is their mountain point of having as much cash as they're going to in the rest of their life for doing whatever they need to set them up for success for whatever they have going forward. So I think it's something we need to talk about. I think it's something we need to go into, and I realize that there's a problem there. Shadow's over there with Sweetie, and Sweetie's annoying him. Sweetie is a female dog, and she, nags at Shadow, and Shadow loses his cool, and then ends up either over here or barking at her and trying to bite her. But they're cute, they're adorable. So I think number 5, retirement will only partially be paid going forward. A lot of people think that retirement benefits are going to be keep going up, and that they're going to keep getting them. Surprise, as I've done in other videos, we now know that they're not. Around 2034, 2033, and then probably 2032, once we get the metrics done for the upcoming analytics from the SSA, from the chief actuary. Basically around 10, 11 years, around 76, 77, 78% will pay out for retirement benefits, which means that if somebody's supposed to get essentially, 100% of whatever their benefits are per month, they're only going to get essentially around 2/3. And the problem with that is that if they only get 2/3, they can't afford the basic things that they need or expect to. Something I want to point out is that retirement benefits are kind of like, spousal benefits, things like that. It's based on the expectation of your standard of living. Like if you were, always not having much money, then you don't, and you haven't paid much into the system, then basically you would retire and not have much money, and that would be your standard of living. If you paid a lot into the system and you worked really hard, made a ton of money, and in an industry that made tons of money, then your standard of living would be higher and would pay into you a higher standard of living. What's going to happen is everybody would essentially lose 1/3 of their payout in 10 years from now for the retirement, which means, just to clarify things, SSI people at 62 convert into retirement if they have enough quarters of coverage. They're 40 quarters of coverage. SSDI people convert into retirement at 66, 67, their full retirement, which means that they end up on retirement. And then at that point, basically, what we're talking about is all these SSI people and retired people ending up on a program that can only pay out 2/3 of what it's supposed to, which is scary. So the problem inherent with this is that there's been no legislation. If President Biden does not change this problem and he loses the House or the Senate, then it will not be fixed through this presidency, which means you'll have to look to 2024. At that it wouldn't be a midterm, it would be a big election, but that's when a lot of new House reps and Senate seats would basically come up. So kind of the problem that we're facing here, just to solidify this whole situation, is that number one, the disabled aren't making enough money because the COLA increase is significantly too low. It's just way too low. Number two, people aren't able to buy their medical records an easy way, in a cheap way, digitally, which means that they're afraid to buy the records because it's a situation where they're like, oh, I can't afford them. Every person should be able to afford their medical records. In fact, medical records, to be honest with you guys, should be free. They should be. Number three, deeper investigate. And here's the thing with the medical records. You pay for the doctor's visit, which includes, supposed to, your medical records, like the charts that they write up about the issues that they found, the diagnostic impressions. So then why do they get the double dip and you pay them for a visit and the records? Like, that's double dipping. It's not appropriate and it's not ethical. Number three, deeper investigations are going to be kicking more and more people off of disability benefits. like they took over 103 million out over 2020. There was 103 million dollars worth of benefits that they kicked people off of in 2020. So for disability benefit fraud review. So that's something to think about right there. What will it be higher for 2021? Almost certainly. 2022, almost certainly. Number 4, transfer wealth. We're going to be seeing basically these life-changing amounts that come to people. Basically, not being there for the disabled like it would for another individual who's working throughout their life. I think that's going to hurt the disabled because, let's call it like it is. Housing is becoming an ultra luxury. And just to put this in fine print here and then kind of blow it up a little so you can see exactly what it looks like. A lot of you guys are not homeless because you have a phone or a computer and you're able to view me. But about, I'd say 40% of my client load are homeless individuals. And as a result of that, these homeless individuals, the amount of them in America, it's growing and it's growing and it's growing. And part of that is the politicians have ruined America. They have. It is what it is. If you think Biden or Trump is going to fix everything, they're not. Biden is very, very bad at financial analysis when it comes to saving America. Trump was very good at that. Biden's very good for civil rights and liberties to people, although he seems to be focusing heavily on illegal immigrants right now. So, whereas Trump was trying to squeeze the systems down so that they didn't have to pay out as much for the retirement and disability benefits. So, it's every politician has their side and their thing. We all agree on that. But one of the things that I'm worried about is that more and more people who are disabled and retired are going to become, to some degree, homeless. And remember, homeless doesn't mean that you live under a tree in a woods or under a bridge in a concrete jungle. It means that you are living in an RV that was not meant for a continuous permanent dwelling, like as a continuous permanent dwelling for at night living. So, which is a lot of things that people are living in. So that's another big problem. And then, of course, number 5, retirement will only partially pay out. It's another thing that's not enough money for people. And then number 6, just to clarify, number 6, I wanted to take for a moment. So we just did the top 5, and I'm going to do the kind of like the extra one, the add-on, if you will, to this whole situation. Number 6, that's Sweetie. She's probably going to start going after Shadow. Number 6 is that we now have a giant social net. Way, way, way back in the day when America was first started, they had VA benefits, like veteran benefits, but they didn't really have disability benefits or retirement benefits. That whole 1930s, 50s, 70s, that's when that stuff really started to take shape and become useful and be distributed to people. And what happened is that we created these programs of a national social net to help people, whether they're old or disabled or a veteran or whatever. We created them because we had all these people who just didn't have money and they were living very, very poor end of life scenarios. But there's another thing that I want to point out with this is that we have almost completely destroyed Americans owning land used for farming. Way back in the day, the way it worked is that you would be born to a family on land, you'd work the land, you'd grow up, you'd stay on the farm, work the land, or you'd go and do something else. But you would always have an attachment to land as something that which you could grow something on to sell to make money. Or you could have come from, one of those families that didn't have land, etc. In which case, the social nets heavily, heavily helped out that group more than anybody else. The problem here is this: mega international, countries, groups, corporations, and also the super billionaires. I know a lot of you guys have seen that Bill Gates has significantly purchased massive amounts of land throughout the United States that is farmable land. As you know, John Morgan owns some of, I think he is the largest land. I'm not sure, but he might be the largest landowner in Florida for land capable of growing things like, marijuana, etc. What's happening is that farming in American land is not really American land anymore. It's held by mega corporations. It's held by billionaires. It's held by people who have financially created the Walmart of farming. And as a result of that, you no longer have Americans being successful and capable of actually living off of the land. If you were to say to most disabled people, when was the last time you grew something, or how does a tractor work, or what are the different functions, or what is the I call it like the timeline or the docket or whatever. But what is the process for growing plants? What do you need to do with them? They would have no idea. And that's because we've systematically bred out of Americans agricultural understanding. As somebody who grew up on a farm, I think one of the big problems that we're running into now is that we have to have massive social support systems. We are, by all standards, a socialist country, with capitalism kind of batting around a ball with socialism. And as a result of that, we no longer have Americans through their families being able to support other Americans, but rather we have America as a nation receiving lots of tax money from everybody to then pay for people because people can't support themselves. This whole identity behind essentially creating this, like, everybody gets a check every month and that's like their living check. However, the problem inherent with that is that that is the next step into socialism. And as you can see with a place like Russia, as you can see with a place like Ukraine, as you can see with a place like China, as you can see with a place like Taiwan, there is a capacity like a giant water hose putting out a fire on a building. There's a capacity of a government to walk over and shut off the water, shut off the benefits to fix the problem. And people are becoming so reliant on essentially these social systems, and they have no familial family-based support, that at this point I'm seeing Americans becoming extremely weakened by the reality that if they don't have a monthly check, they could die. They can't get their insurance stuff, they can't get their medicine stuff, they can't get their this, that, and they could die. They can't get fuel to transport them, and this is the problem. So just to summarize, and then I'm going to go ahead and reach out to the person he's a security advisor, give us a little update on the Ukraine situation. The first issue is the COLA 5.9. It should have been much higher. It should have been 7, 8, 9% increase for people. So number one issue, lack of money to the disabled and retired. Number two issue is people having to pay too much for the medical records. So I'm going to put out there the directive letter that I use so anybody can basically buy the medical records cheaper. Number three, deeper investigations are becoming more and more aggressive with superior technology. So basically, the ability to remove benefits from people is now surpassing anything we've ever seen before. So issue number three is, very simply put, more and more people are going to get kicked off the benefit train. And very unfairly too with that situation, because you can take any disabled person on a very, very good day, take videos of them, and then say, hey, look what I caught them doing. They were walking and they're not using their cane, their crutch, their walker, whatever. 4, transfer of wealth problems. Once again, not enough future or lump sum payments to the disabled or retired from older generations that are passing away. Number 5, retirement is only going to pay out 1/3 in about 10 or 11 years, or rather 2/3 of what's supposed to, meaning that, if you were expecting your full retirement check, you'd only get around 2/3 around 2033, 2034. So 10, 11 years from now. And then number 6, people are now reliant on this social system, this social insurance, because they can no longer go ahead and create a future based on their family. And the biggest problem of all of that is that their family would own land, they would work land, they would make money. That's all going away. The idea of local families owning ranches is gone. It's all going away. Families that figured out how to make the biggest money out of land, they're the successful ones that will continue, and they will become the new quasi dukes of America. We're just ending up into another royal cycle. Presidents will be the kings and queens, and then you will have big landowners, which are the dukes, who just become basically politicians to manipulate law to help their financial landscape. Now, let me give you a quick example. How many poor people do you know make a significant amount of money off of wood? None, because they don't own any land. That's the reality now. If you look at these billionaires and heavy duty millionaires, they own massive forests, and they're able to make millions and millions off of those forests every single year, something that the poor could never tap into. Similarly, people with mining, right? Super wealthy people. Could poor people go ahead and, do something with mining? No, they don't own any land anymore. So the reality is that, these rights of I own this, could you get, maybe some oil out of it? Could you get some quartz out of it? Could you get some marble out of it? Could you get some whatever? That world doesn't exist anymore because all that land has been purchased up by the mega corporations. So that's the big issue I see. All right, I'm going to reach out right now to basically a gentleman to talk specifically about what's going on with Russia, and then we'll kind of keep rolling forward from there. Indeed. And let's get this ball rolling. I'm going to give him a call right now and get this thing going. My main questions to him are going to be basically a summary as to what happened within the past 24 hours and basically what happened. Howdy, good sir. How are you doing?
Very well, sir. Thank you.
Very good, sir. So the big thing that I've been hearing from people about the whole Russia-Ukraine situation is that, there's been a lot of developments over the past 24 hours. There's been a lot of strategic talks about what the end game is going to look like. Can you tell me, for a lot of the people that are watching, the Americans that are concerned right now with what's going on with Biden, what's happened within the past 24 hours, and should they be worried about anything like nuclear or digital attacks or anything like that? I mean, as somebody who just had their social security stolen by somebody who hacked Nelnet, the student loan company, I can tell you, it's obviously a concern for me, but past 24 hours, what's been going on?
As we spoke last week, Walter, and again, thank you for the opportunity to share some information across your channel. We talked about forecasting out 4 days or 6 days, and I think the parting comments from our group were we're taking it 24 hours at a time. It's very dynamic. We have concerns from the nuclear side. We have concerns from our president. We have concerns from NATO. We have concerns about children and their welfare, and it's very difficult to separate the small pieces. But let's give it a go. Just in the last, we'll kind of go backwards just a little bit. The talks today that were held in Turkey, trying to remediate or come to a ceasefire agreement, did not work out very well. The top diplomats made absolutely no progress as troops continued to move closer to Kyiv, and the Ukraine Foreign Minister Kuleba basically indicated, he was quoted as saying his country won't surrender to his Russian counterpart that we spoke about last week, that's Sergei Lavrov. It's frustrating because this is on the heels of agreed upon ceasefire to let civilians in different districts and areas of the country to safely evacuate and leave the country. And ultimately it became a corral, if you will, or a pathway for human targets by Russian troops. Just a horrific turn of events that could not be mistaken, not in several locations, as they were supposed to be in a 12-hour ceasefire to let these folks out. Yesterday we experienced the attack on the maternity and children's hospital and off the Sea of Azov, as we talked about last week, the port city of Mariupol, and just horrific. A lot of the videos getting out into other sectors, and it's viewable if there's a warning on the video if you come in contact with it. Be careful if it's not something you're going to be comfortable with. It's horrific video of this facility as well as others being shelled with many civilian casualties. They continue to hit Mariupol with missiles time and time again, just to avoid allowing these folks out. Same thing in areas of Kyiv and some of the other larger cities where evacuation routes were quote unquote approved. And then ultimately it was not that at all. It was not that at all. very, very deceptive and heartbreaking. If it did anything, it validated to the world Mr. Putin's ability to not care about human life, to take for granted his troops were stronger than all, which has been founded over the last 2 weeks to be not valid, and that poor caretaking of his equipment and his people have led to some failures. Very, very heartbreaking. Very, very heartbreaking. Regarding the nuclear side, we have, as you know, from years past, Chernobyl plants were shut down, but they were still provided with power to keep the cooling, to keep the cooling cells, fuel cells, cooled down, and the power to that has been cut off. The watchdog organization, nuclear watchdog organization, has come on scene to Chernobyl and done their inspection, and at this point does not believe. At this point, it's a concern for leakage or a greater threat than it already has been for the last 40, 50 years. At least they have their eye on it, but there's a move towards the where the rockets hit Zapata last week and hit the outside of the reactor that was one of six. It's the largest in Europe. One of six reactors. Hit the outer shell. That particular reactor that was hit was under renovation and required immediate cooling to put the flames out and keep the fuel cells cool. And there's a move to continue shelling that area to take over. Basically, if the Russians can take over, there's a strategic position that comes with, if you will, having I don't want to say residence, but control of those facilities, and it's difficult. It's very difficult to hear this going on. Is it a move against the country? Sure. Is it strategic and considered like a siege of warfare, if you will, because it comes with controlling the ability to turn the power on and off or restart or not restart. So it can create fear on one side to get people to go back to the table to negotiate, thinking that they've lost control of these two nuclear sites in theory. And it also allows for misinformation to go back to Russian citizens in country, indicating this was the cause for the invasion into Ukraine, is to get control of these two facilities. And it's a concern. It's a concern. The United States and NATO are very aware of it. Again, the watchdog agency is aware of it as well, and committed to not allowing their reporting to be influenced by the politics, but to make sure folks are aware of what we're involving ourselves with. I think what we're seeing from our standpoint is a slight step back from the tactical conversation, tactical nuclear weapons versus the large kiloton weapons. I don't think it's off the table completely, but right now it doesn't seem to be part of the narratives that's taking place. The narratives include moving the troops into Kyiv, and we see it being at least potentially another 7 days to 2 weeks for that to be accomplished. They're undernourished. Their vehicles are not in good repair. Some of the troops are moving to down the northwest side of the city in the anticipation of maybe a lesser route. But what they're encountering around the city borders are tremendous Ukraine forces and civilians that are fighting and keeping them from advancing. It's just become the guerrilla long day, guerrilla warfare and urban warfare that we've spoken about, and they become very adept at the learning skills and the maneuvers that are needed to place vehicles. They're also known as the 40-ton metal tomb, but these tanks, personnel carriers, but they're not doing well. They're not advancing quickly, and there's a lot of resentment built up on both sides of the border. Obviously, Ukraine citizens continue to leave the country as quickly as physically possible, and the numbers we're seeing are, as we talked about when this began, we anticipated between 3.5 and 5 million people fleeing the country. And I think the numbers are right around that 3 million mark at this point. We talked last week about the support for refugees in other countries and the need to ensure that the countries are sustainable for periods of time while this goes on, that they can caretake in both food, water, shelter, medicine, and medical care for those that have needs. And hopefully we'll start to see the countries on the opposite side, where the western sides of the inbound of countries accepting these refugees, as people continue to move to what they feel will be potentially safer places, or finding family in other parts of the countries, Moldova, Romania, Hungary, Germany, as they continue moving on and locating either an opportunity to continue leaving, or Poland and some of the other countries, but hopefully moving on to countries where the support is a little easier to obtain, other than millions of people at a time. Regarding Kyiv, what's happening there as of about, I guess we'll call it about 6 p.m. Eastern time here. The Russian troops, like I said, are making progress. They've only advanced about maybe 4 kilometers in the past day. The troops are, again, to the northwest of Kyiv, in the area of the Hostomel Airport, and that's about 5 miles just outside the city limits. And there's 2 lines of advance, and some of these are as far out as 25 miles. But again, every opportunity that the Russian troops have had to find really, again, stiff resistance. So what we're finding is some have actually been turned around. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to look at a compilation of notes here from our group. Some are turning back to the northeast. And right now, as of, like I said, 6 p.m. Eastern, it's unknown why they did an about phase to head back, other than to regroup, replenish, unknown, or maybe the fighting became too intense, or one of the other considerations of this, troops are no longer willing to meet that engagement. There are many troops that didn't realize they were actually no longer on military maneuvers and had no clue that they were in the Ukraine. So it becomes very difficult when they start to encounter live fire and people firebombing their vehicles. So it's unclear specifically what this is. We know we have air defense artillery systems, surface-to-air missiles, anti-tank missiles, shoulder-mounted, truck-mounted with launchers, have been donated to Ukraine forces, and Kyiv remains fairly well defended by definition. But again, they're looking for more. Kyiv, Zelensky, and I'll come back to him in a minute. President Zelensky has indicated they need more. Right now, they're indicating, just by our count, that somewhere around 800 missiles have been fired against Ukraine since forces crossed over the line. So the use of the anti-tank, anti-aircraft weapons that have been provided have been incredibly helpful and beneficial. And one of the things we did talk about last week was the concern about the definition of thermobaric vacuum. And it's how significant and dangerous this particular weapon was, which was the one that atomized the fuel. And then moments later, as the cloud spread out, in the location of the missile, it would ignite the second explosive on that weapon would ignite the atomized fuel, basically sucking up all the oxygen, including in a person's lungs if they were present, just creating a massive fireball. Over the next couple of days, we had a high level of reliability on Thursday last week when we spoke that we believed Russian troops were potentially in possession and had used these in the first 8 or 9 days, and ultimately it has been determined with almost 100%, I'll call it 99.9% validation, that we were correct. They're using launchers for the deployment system of this basically Geneva Convention forbids it, but it's being used against the citizenry and in the assault from Russia into the sovereignty of Ukraine. Today, a lot of President Zelensky was talking about a lot of the routes that were scheduled to be evacuation routes were completely blocked, and it's making it incredibly difficult for their folks to get out. They still have tons of troops civilians taking the buses and trains, and just horrible. They do say they are preparing today for chemical attacking country, and they're concerned about biological weapons. In Ukraine, he's asking for support again from the European Union and from NATO, which is chemical attacks are just horrific. We've seen them in subway systems. We've seen them in public places. We've seen them all over the world used, and we recognize truly how deadly and how quickly they work in different environments. And to hear the president of a country publicly announce that's what they fear coming is absolutely of gravest concern for, I would say, the world, just for the world, just completely unacceptable and conventional warfare. On a better note, and maybe a little bit, I don't know if it's better, but reassuring note, possibly, we were able to reach out to UNICEF, which is the United Nations Children's Fund, and additionally the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, to find out more specifically what's happening with not only the adults, but children that are being separated from their parents or family. As we discussed, parents arriving at the Polish border, handing their children to complete strangers and returning into Ukraine to fight. And there was a tremendous concern regarding that video, regarding it occurring, and both organizations are funded again through the United Nations, but the concern is children without parental care are at increased risk for either violence, abuse, and exploitation. And here we have a national emergency, and the risk of trafficking picks up. And what they've basically done is come on site and created an immediate identification and registration of any children that are either unaccompanied or have been separated from family fleeing the Ukraine, and allowing them to access into other locations. And what they've done is they've created safe spaces for children and families. They're creating links to national child protection systems in other countries. It's obviously very dynamic and growing, and the primary concern is the critical needs for the children, and family tracing and reunification mechanisms that they've used in other places with success. They have over 100,000 children that they indicate have already come across the border without parents or custodians, and half of which are with disabilities that were living in institutional care and boarding schools in Ukraine. And now they had been either living with relatives or legal guardians or separated from their parents. And what they're doing is just, as this comes under crossing the border with these circumstances, it's a large humanitarian evacuation, and it's life-saving, and they welcome the efforts to bring children to safety. And it's just really, they've been doing it for like 8 decades, like 80 years. Okay, 8 decades, and they're just trying to make sure that these children are cared for, that they receive the proper medication, any paperwork that goes with them, or case files for their medical or emotional or physical needs are being met, and they're just truly grateful to be empowered with it. And it's really, as our group went through this and took a look at it, it really has been over the years a quiet piece of rescue, a quiet piece of and humble piece to ensure the children. And it's rewarding to know that it was established so long ago and so well funded. Excuse me. And it's an important piece, just to know that caretaking exists, and it's still being carried out. I would like to say the Red Cross, Red Cross, and a few others like the Red Cross globally, are more the main view we see when an emergency takes place. But here we see something a little bit different, and it's or I shouldn't say different, I should say ongoing, but kind of a humbler, quieter piece. And it was refreshing for our group looking at this Samson live thing going on, that here we have people who just quietly do what they need to do. One of the other things that I just want to touch on, if for a minute here, is the troop movement in the South. We spoke about last week as far as amphibious forces in the Sea of Azov, and the Black Sea, and the southern flank. The Russian troops took the city of Kherson, and it was anticipated they'd move western. Part of the troops would move westerly towards Mikhaila, and with step towards Odessa, and plan to set up camp in that area and take over Odessa, the seaport and naval fleet there, and basically take control of the Black Sea. And on the East Coast, we talked just a minute ago about Mariupol on the Sea of Azov, and it continues, other than the horrific atrocity of bombing a maternity and children's hospital. They've cut off all food, all water. They're dropping bombs all day and all night, according to the city council over there that a member of our group communicates with. And they indicate that they've been cut off, cities surrounded, and they just continue to pound the city just to not allow the folks out, just to keep them there under their span of control. One one of the things the Russian ministry, after the hospital bombing, tried to claim it was a militia position, and it was equipped with combat equipment. And video we had the opportunity to view clearly showed their patients, staff, and women in late pregnancy carried from the hospital. So no validation of the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson. In a separate event, north and west of Kyiv is a very small town known as Vorzel. It's a village of about maybe 6,500 people, but there's an orphanage and a local maternity hospital there. And they had previously been stranded kind of in the hospital, but had been successfully evacuated as of about 5 p.m. Eastern time, Eastern Standard Time, according to a member, advisor of the President Zelensky's office. Last piece, I think here that I think maybe on some folks' mind is the airspace, and we talked about the airspace and the no-fly zone over Ukraine, and the concern of who can fly there and who can't, and what it means, and is it an act of war if we take out, if U.S. or NATO troops, NATO aircraft take up the airspace and we encounter a Russian fighter jet and engage that fighter jet, is it considered an act of war? And this has been a real source of contention just in the last, I'm going to say since Saturday, and I hate to go back that far, but it's just a little crazy. Originally, back on Saturday, there was a conversation that who could give the Ukraine's jets, and what jets, and what kind of jets, and who could fly them, and where they could be from. And ultimately, what they come up with is, and I'm going back to Saturday, so when I say who they came up with, it starts with basically Soviet era, about 28 fixed-wing aircraft, the old MiG-29 fighter jets, and the Pentagon is like, well, we can't let that happen, and we can't give it to them, but we can give them to somebody else to give to them, and that might be okay. And it's like, well, hold on, maybe that's not going to be okay. Let's change our mind, and we'll just send them to Germany, to the air base in Germany. And then the Ukrainians can kind of pick them up there because they already know how to fly them. And then they can just fly them back across Poland and engage. Well, we don't want them on a U.S. air base in Germany, comes the next thought, because that could be a potential target by Russia, because we are now using a military air base in a NATO country to stage this equipment. So this goes back and forth for days, and it really starts to spin up little, almost, I don't want to say, it becomes a fiasco, so what it becomes. So these planes originally were okay, and we're going to send them, and what about NATO, and let's not worry about that, let's, we're all together on this, and then it goes back clearly to, how's this going to work? Wait a minute, okay, we're going to approve it, but we're going to step back. And then it became, okay, well, maybe we won't, we'll just tell them we're going to loan them. And then it became the Pentagon saying, yeah, we don't think this is a very good idea. And then it becomes the president basically saying, yeah, I think I said yes yesterday, but yeah, today we're going to veto that idea. I'm going to veto that idea. We're not going to let that happen. So here, after unrelenting, embarrassing conversations back and forth, this is where we are. Is apparently those jets are not going to be sent to Germany. Those jets will not be provided by or endorsed for the United States, and we are at a standstill. Very, very frustrating. Very frustrating. We can all find our own words for how we feel about it. There is the NATO alliance. We have a large humanitarian, moral, ethical piece that's taking place. We have violations of humanitarian rules, laws, just the humanistic side of what Mr. Putin is doing, saying on one side of his face and doing on another. And there are also those folks who caretake the financial side of this and what's occurred in the fallout just in the first 2 weeks financially in other countries around the world regarding positions on oil, positions on wheat, and where we're heading in the next year or two, regardless of where this ends, just with the impact right now we're feeling, how long it will take to overcome that. And as you pointed out just a little bit ago, Walter, the cost of living does not, this last cost of living does not encapsulate the current inflation we're experiencing. And the outlook is grim. It's other than the safety of those children and the ability to caretake, it has not been a successful week for military operations and support, and for those folks trying to get back and forth to work with 50 cent and dollar surprises each time they show up at the pump, which may be every other day, weekly. And it's unfortunate. It's very difficult, but we continue to report what we believe is taking place. I would like to share one last piece, if I could.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Bonus piece, if you will.
Yeah.
And we can speak about it potentially next week. There are folks who indicated, at least through information that came back to our channels, that there's concerns about folks who don't have the ability to be mobile very quickly, that are listening either domestically here in North America, but other parts of the world. Their disability keeps them from moving very quickly, or to help them having the ability to leave their home or wherever they're at. And the concerns of a sudden evacuation or a need for self caretaking are exasperated by what's taking place, and the fears that are easily identifiable from what's taking place globally, including the financial conversations. There's two resources that I'd like folks to take a look at, and one is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, webpage, and there's a location on the webpage, and it's pretty easy to find it. If you can't find it, you can, I'll use Google as a verb. You can Google it or Yahoo it or however you search the internet. And what you're looking for is the recommendations from FEMA regarding the needs of folks to start recognizing and planning in advance to caretake for themselves. And I'm not speaking specifically about the domestic invasion, but this is a result of identification of resources through both Superstorm Katrina and Superstorm Sandy. Those were the largest two property and life losses in our country due to weather. And there may be an opportunity for folks to start slowly in obtaining what their needs are. If you have transportation concerns, have a primary and a backup person, friend, family, neighbor, maybe your religious organization, your social organization, your support group creates that phone chain. Should it need be that you can have some peace of mind to know that you have both a primary and a backup person or a group of people that can assist you in transportation. As far as maintaining your medications, it's if you take oral medications that are non-refrigerated, speak to your pharmacy, speak to your doctors and nurses or PAs or whoever you receive those medical scripts from, whether it's the VA or wherever that might be from, and what is the plan and how do I plan for that in the event of an emergency? How does that work? Second thing maybe to add to the medication list is, do any of your medications require any sort of temperature control? And if they have to be kept as close to refrigerator alcohol temperature as possible? Do you have availability of ice? Do you have availability to keeping one of those freezer packs in your freezer? So if you needed it, you could drop that into a Ziploc with your medication or another type of secure bag to keep the temperature as low as possible as you move out of wherever you're at and make your way to a place that you can restabilize that. Dry goods, protein bars, dehydrated products. Again, we're not looking to have you break the bank, but a little bit of sustenance, a flashlight, whether it runs on batteries or plugs in and runs on a portable little battery, or might be a great way to prepare. Keeping everything in one bag at a time. If you have a need to travel with documents, can you make copies of those documents and have somebody scan them for you and put them on a flash drive that you can secure in your wallet or other safe place? Keeping a small amount of cash with small denominations in case you need to make a purchase in the event that you can't have somebody bring you cash. Just these are kind of like some of the basic things. An inflatable pillow. And I know it sounds funny, but almost like C-shaped aircraft type. You're traveling in the core. If you need a pillow that will help you relax a little, even if you're sitting in a chair upright or a chair upright, and you kind of rest yourself on that, and it inflates. You can get them at the dollar store or Goodwill or wherever else they're offered. These are things that you may want to consider slowly assembling, not hoarding. There's no reason to create hoarding, but if you can kind of put yourself in a position of mental health strength, that should a weather emergency, utility event take place in your community, or chemical, or anything to that effect, at least you're mobile and have the ability to bring with you what you need to bring. Please do check with, like I said, social and religious organizations, centers for care. You can check with your local office of emergency management if it's available in your city or state or county. And there may be people very willing to help you create a list of your personal needs and some generic items. But again, you'll see on the FEMA site, they're going to say they recommend taking care of yourself for 72 hours. We ask that you consider making it not 3 days, but maybe 5 days. It's always easier to bring a little home with you than to have a need for a couple of days, especially when it comes to medicines, food, even bottled water, if you will. We'll just sanitation tablets for yourself. So just something to think about. Again, not trying to forecast. I know of nothing that places us in jeopardy. But right now, the Northeast is about to experience another one of those crazy weather events and lots of snow, wind, and rain. And if the power goes out, those are the types of things that can be used. That flashlight can be used. The medication you're not worried about. If you have an issue with that you require electrical power, where will you find that, or where have you been finding it previously, and is it portable? And just creating that list, just creating that good list, and being thankful to the folks that participate when we get help from anybody. Just not in a situation, but just be grateful that there are a lot of caring people, a lot of volunteers, and it's a good opportunity to create some new friendships, reestablish some old friendships, and taking care and having that confidence that you can sleep at night, and it's okay. It's going to be okay. So that's what we have for you this week, sir.
Thank you. That's excellent. I always go to you for information related to this. Oh, Jimmy, thank you so much for the $9.99 donation. Excellent with the square and compass there. I guess the big thing that I would say is, and there's a large fear for people not understanding why Putin has no better, end game to this thing. Because, to some degree, you would expect military leaders and, the heads of state to, have a plan of 5 potential outcomes. So outcome number 1, you roll in, you take over in a day. Outcome number 5, it takes 40 days to take over the country. I don't want to see Russia destroy Ukraine, but I know that Ukraine will be nearly completely destroyed, kind of like France in World War II. Until they basically get what they want, because they've already heavy tilted into this investment. And the only way to get out of it is to pour even more, kind of like boating. But, it's a sad thing, because at this point, I don't foresee this only being a Ukraine war. I foresee many other countries right around Ukraine being afraid, hence the deals with these jets. And, can we get them over there? Can we borrow some? Can we use some of yours if we give them ours? What I think is the goal of the United States is the goal of it through many of these wars that it was not a part of, which is where it just massively funds through military, financial support, etc., the weapons needed to wage a war against another country to weaken that other country. But the problem is that I see is that where the grid lines are being drawn as to who supports who, Russia gets to have China, and China and Russia are 2 of the, if not best, but top players when it comes to digital hacking and manipulation. And, a lot of these individuals on here don't realize that their name is on a list to receive a check every single month. And that name could be easily erased, and that would ruin their life in a very short period of time. And I think another thing that's relevant to the disabled and the retired is that if we go into war nowadays is not like war back in the day. You go back to World War II, digital hacking was completely different. It was like, you were dealing with tubes. Resistors didn't even really come into effect at that point. It was just a different world. But now the situation is, their information could be stolen. Their ability to pay things could be manipulated heavily. I mean, look, if it took a single day to ruin the Russian economy, how long would it take to ruin the American economy? Are all these other little countries capable of supporting us? So, yeah.
And it's a great series of questions. So back to the I'll take the second question first. Can we support ourselves? We always have. Years ago, I think it was Putin was asked why they didn't invade boots on the ground with the United States, and the comment was because all the citizens have guns.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the perception. That was the perception of, of anticipated failure. The analysis was anticipated failure. And when we think about, can we support ourselves? Yeah. I believe we have the opportunity with good decision making, and so our group struggles with trying to decipher what we're not seeing, and we try and look at it from a holistic view. So, as the Pentagon makes a statement, there's usually a couple of nuggets in there that can lead us to why they said what they said. Where we have the president doing an about face in the same day on a very, very serious topic is almost without words. We look at each other and reach back out and recheck our resources to see what's taking place, and what did we miss? Did we miss a piece? Did we miss several pieces? Were you asleep at the switch? Did that's just not what's happening. So, can we be self-sufficient? If I don't see the opportunity for Mr. Putin to move against the United States. It's just it's probably just don't see it. Again, last week, right before we spoke, I got the opportunity earlier in the day regarding the Secretary of Defense, Austin, his comments on the abilities of us to determine within 3 to 5 seconds what it is, what could be being sent from Russia, where it needs to be intercepted, what is the backup plans, what are the responses. That takes place very, very quickly, and I think we do have the ability to stop the concerns that he was talking about and we talked about as far as nuclear at this stage. So one of the things that came up, and it's a little interesting, I wouldn't have really probably commented, but you bring it up and it's a good point. So far in 2 weeks, 9 Soviet commanders have died.
Right.
First one right?
Yeah.
It was originally, like we spoke last week, it was only like one guy, and it was reported a sniper took him out. And there's conversation that he was leading like the entire thing. And then 2 days later, 2 more generals that were out on the front, and their troops are not performing well, suddenly caught that same sniper round, according to mainstream media, or Russian media, if you will. And they absolutely were named as heroes. They weren't calling them war heroes, but one of the things that we're hearing earlier, maybe early yesterday, is there's folks that are saying Mr. Putin is angry, and he's very frustrated over the failure and the inability to seize Kyiv. And nobody wants to tell him, Mr. Putin, about any bad news, because they don't want to be the next guy to catch the quote-unquote sniper round.
Yeah.
If you will. And it's, what's the end game? He's got to go all in. Or he'll end up being removed in either a dead or alive statue of position. He'll either be removed physically, and I don't really know, we hate to call for the death of a foreign leader, but there are people who will speak very strongly on both sides of it. But it could be a dead or alive kind of approach, depending on what country takes the position. The United States has a standing position not to to seek out and cause the death of a foreign leader. And very interesting position. Very, very interesting position. So it's President Zelensky calls him probably the most wanted man in the world right now. That's not the guy who says, most amazing man in the world. That's not this guy. Okay, so again, we're still sending millions of rounds of ammo and doing what we can. I don't know where the fine line in the sand is, where we can supply anti-aircraft, anti-tank devices. We can supply drones, or drones can be supplied. We didn't supply them. The United States did not supply them, but they were sold and to Ukraine. And bullets are okay, and all kinds of other stuff's okay to supply them. But certainly planes are not considered that. Like, what is it, too big? I'm being sarcastic, and I shouldn't be, but...
No, it makes sense. You're right. I mean, why all the other armory types, all the other ammunition, the ammunition on the planes is acceptable. They've used that with other types of war machines. So your point is, why don't we give essentially these amazing jets to give the Ukraine an advantage? And then it calls into question Biden's capacity to want the success of Ukraine to basically survive against Russia. And then, of course, with, there's all these ties with Biden to Russia, just like there were with Trump to some degree. So you always have to call into question what's going on there. And then, of course, there's reports that there's people that are these great snipers coming in from different countries to support Ukraine. But I think you're right. At the same time, these 4-star, 3-star generals, they're not out in the open, and you would think that they'd get the sniper. They would catch the sniper if the sniper shot them, So.
And that's and it doesn't take, it's thinly veiled. And if the Ukraine people find, or troops, civilian and conscripted troops find value that a Ukraine sniper made the shot, and it's good for their morale, that's something that they chose. If it was not a Ukraine sniper and was either self-inflicted or friendly fire, that we won't know that. We won't know that until a long time from now. You're not going to have somebody say, "Hey, that's the guy," right? So,
right.
That's it. We'll pull the trigger, and as we know, that type of both public and private, that's the type of thing that just goes. These people disappear. They're not seen. They just, for the most part, they disappear, and it's frustrating. It's look, again, this comes down to, we were 24 hours at a time, but so much happens in 24 hours. Speaking of the pieces and parts, China indicated they are not willing to supply Russia. We've got about a 65-70% validation on this. That one of the guys just handed it to me. That Russia's looking for parts to repair their equipment, their military equipment, from China, and China's indicating there's no parts available for them to be sold. So,
well, then that's going to kill the relationship with China, because that's the war machine of which they bought the product of China to be supplied to do well. And if there's no parts available, then that tells us that China has the capacity to either not create them or is holding on to them for a future war with Taiwan,
Yeah, or it's that was part of their plan all along. I'd like to give them great credit for the Chinese fighting skills, and when we going back to forever.
Yeah,
China, and it's always a very well orchestrated, methodical. Both sides looking at all holistic sides before they do anything. And I don't know if that's part of it, but I just found it to be an interesting piece. And we thank Roger here, who was good enough just to hand that off, but and he handed it to me smiling and walked away smiling. And I was like, all right, that's a shout out to him for that good piece. But
yeah,
the team continues to look at this, and hopefully we can get back to you soon. And I wish everyone a safe and comfortable piece this week. And thank you for again allowing us to share, and hopefully somebody comes away with some value for what we have to offer here.
perfect.
My thanks.
Well, good sir, thank you so much for joining us for the show. Excellent news as always. I'm gonna keep rolling, doing a couple of phone calls here and there, but seriously, you make the show an amazing update on the war, and I think it's incredibly important because the disabled, the retired, they are, and they don't realize usually, very fragile in this situation. So your recommendations about buying a flashlight, having some sort of food prepared, non-perishables, etc. Amazing information. You have a wonderful night, and I'll catch up with you in the not too distant future.
That's be well.
You as well, good sir. Bye-bye. So guys, that was all really amazing information. And it's one of those things where, as a person who comes from the security industry and has a huge background, it's just incredible to have that in. And then I'm able to show that and give you guys an opportunity to hear that on the show. Wow, Teapot, $20 donation. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I've actually been working with the security specialist here specifically on creating a video that explains what to do if there is a nuclear attack. And basically my parents have given me the okay to use the New Jersey property as an explanation as to what type of place you want to be in, what type of surroundings you want to look for, what types of ways that you can go ahead and prepare for buying things, prepping things, organizing things, packing things, etc. So we're going to actually release a video, and the amazing thing about it is that video has already been started to be edited. It's already in the system right now being created. So kind of the bottom line is I'm excited, and I think it's relevant. I think it's important because while a lot of people think that this is just a Russian thing, there's other countries that support Russia that are going to begin the process of essentially going and doing things that normally Russia would be considered like the only nation who would do that themselves. It's not. There's lots of nations out there that will join Russia's cause. Russia, China, Africa, they all want to be on their own new currency as the international standard, and they want to throw out the US dollar. So what's crucial to understand here is that because they have so much to gain by getting rid of the US control of international economy, and because we have so much to, as Americans, lose by not having them constantly using our currency for international trade, it means that they are primed to be successful against America financially if they succeed in creating a new union of countries like Russia, like China, many of the countries in Africa, many of the countries in the Middle East, etc. So it's incredibly important to understand here is that we don't win in this. At the end of the day, even though this is going on with Russia and Russia's not doing well, we don't win. There's no way that we win because the whole point of it is China wants to get off of the US dollar for international trade. Russia wants to get off the US dollar for international trade. Africa wants to get off the US dollar. Most of the Middle East, whether it's Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, they all want to be completely released from integration with the United States. It's a cultural difference. If you start to think of it this way, you have countries that want to control their populations and use their culture and do it their way, as opposed to having general freedom and everybody being able to access all information. That's what's happening here. You have two worlds. You have the one world of, we want to control whatever you think and hear and believe. And then you have the one world of, you have free information, free knowledge, everything is available to you, innovate and create and be great. Right? You have two different identities here. Russia, China, many parts of Africa, many parts of the Middle East, they control the narrative. Their cultures and religions define essentially how their government is going to dictate to the people. America is becoming more like these guys. But if Americans can hold on to it, the freedom, the idea of it, and pushing it, then they will remain like they were as an allied force back in World War II, open to the idea of allowing people to choose their futures as opposed to living by the standards of a culture that will dictate how they will exist as a number to the system. It's something to think about. All right, guys. So basically, here's what you need to know. I'm going to start answering a couple of phone calls. I know it is 9:55 p.m. I hope all is well. Let's go ahead and begin. If you guys are open for it, I'm going to put the phone number in there. I know I missed a few phone calls real quick. What I'm going to do is go back over here. Um, let's see. Let's see real quick. I missed a couple phone calls. Let me see if I can pull them up. Here they are. I'm going to go ahead and call them right now and basically begin. I'll get them on the phone and then we'll switch them over to the speakers so that you can hear them. Let's start with somebody way up north to begin with, and then we'll kind of keep rolling from there. I'm going to do about 3 or 4 phone calls, and then I'll go ahead and end it for the night. That way we can get some of those details in and we can always answer questions. All right, guys. Perfect, perfect. Thank you. Keep it scale. Excellent, excellent. Let's see if we can get this person on the phone. Hi, this is Attorney Walter Knott. We are live on YouTube. Remember, don't use your real name throughout the YouTube channel process. And also, would you like me to answer a specific question, or would you like me to go ahead and basically answer or run hearing questions with you?
Okay, well, I guess I have a specific question about, I have my house that I'd like to sell.
Okay.
Because I've inherited my grandma's house.
Sure.
And you know, my name's been on there for 15 years, along with several other people, and they said, oh, well, you know, you can't live at that house. You have to stay there until you sell it because you can't have 2 houses in your name. And you know, so I'm trying to stay there, and I don't have a refrigerator and a stove, and you know, I want to know if I can go live at this place, and then you know, if I need to borrow some money off of somebody, how do I go about doing that? I mean, you know, so I don't get in trouble.
Are you SSI, SSDI, retirement? What are you on?
I'm on SSI.
Okay, so yeah, you can't have more than 1 house. So what you've got, and the grandmother's house has multiple owners on the title. Is that correct?
Well, Mom's name's on there, and she died, and then I have another relative. So I'm gonna have, yeah, but he's not around. I don't know. I'm sure he's around somewhere. But
Okay.
yeah, he's not paying anything for anything I am.
Okay, so bottom line is he still has an asset right to that property and that house. You might want to reach out to him, see if you can kind of work a deal. But which house? I'm assuming the grandmother's house is worth more than the current house you're staying in, correct?
Correct.
All right, so you're going to want to contact a tax attorney and talk with them, basically like a free whatever consultation to see if you can get a situation where you sell the 1 house, get a tax. There's a tax benefit when you sell a house and convert it into use for the other house, whether it's for the purchase of the other house or updates or upgrades made to the other house, and then you'll upgrade to that bigger, better house. When it comes to things like, you know, amenities like, you know, cooking appliances, etc., I used to tell people to go to the local church and groups and things like that. But here's the thing: most of these traditional cooking items, like a stove and stuff like that, they make little tiny versions of that are electric that you plug into the wall. Frankly, they're just more efficient. They're cheap. It might be a better option for you. Obviously, a refrigerator, you're gonna have to do a refrigerator, but for like the stove and oven, I would honestly go ahead and buy like one of those mini ones and use that, because the amount of energy stoves like traditional units use nowadays is just extreme, and you'll save a lot more money just by going with those mini units. The other thing too, and also look at RV ones. RV ones, they're either made really well or horribly. Look at the 5-star reviews on those units. The other thing too is that with this bigger, better house, you got to consider like what's the upkeep like? How much mowing of the grass am I going to have to do? How much upkeep on the house needs to be done, etc. So that's something else to think about. But
well, it's actually cheaper to live. It's actually cheaper to live at the other house.
Okay, the grandmother's house.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, I would go talk with the tax professional, but you've got to go ahead and sell the 1 house, or look into options for transfers. But basically sell it and then see how you can tax-wise use the funds with the new house without getting dinged.
So what is that called again that I can do to try to help with the taxes?
Well, you're going to reach out to a tax attorney, and what they have is this rule, whereas if you sell a house, you can usually roll funds over. It's like a quasi gift. It's like a gifty oriented tax, where if you're using the funds on, the upkeep of a new house or a house in general, or to purchase a house, you don't get hit as hard. And you do only have the option to have one house in your name. And if your mom is dead and there's only one other like cousin or whatever in you, then you're going to have to go ahead and work out the details ahead of time with that other cousin who has an interest in it as to what their position would be in it. Because if they pop up out of nowhere and say, well, I want it sold, and you don't agree with that, then guess what?
I want a what?
Like if they want, if they want to sell it and you don't want to sell it, like if you find that other cousin and he wants to sell it and you don't want to sell it and you've already sold your home, then that grandmother's house, if he wants to sell it and he has an equal ownership part to it, then that house will be sold.
Well, it is an equal ownership. I have more of, actually, I don't know how he ended up on it in the first place. But if I have taxes, if I have liens that are against me for medical bills, is there anything that I can do? I guess they're from 2002 or something. They're really old. Is there anything I can do about that?
So basically what this comes down to is, and remember, what you're talking about is liens and interests against, a person. I am not usually that kind of attorney. What I would suggest is this. When it comes to liens against you, you have to see what the state's laws are pertaining to homestead protections for the house. And you also have to see what, attachments they have to your credit at this point and what types of things they are, claiming that you owe them. But you would need essentially, kind of a loan-oriented attorney to go ahead and review that information, because that just wouldn't be within my field. But I would say this: figure out, what state are you in?
Ohio.
Ohio. Yeah, I don't know anything about Ohio's laws pertaining to loans, regulations, and homestead allowances. So I would call around up there and see who you can find who can help you out with basically, medical cost loans and liens that are against you, and then see what they can attach to. That's the point there. Yeah.
So why is it that when I call up and ask the Social Security what I can do and if they can help me, they say, or if I try to call up an attorney, they just want somebody that has a case to get on SS Social Disability or something. But then other than that, it's like, oh, is it over $2,000? Oh my, well then you can't do that. I'm sorry, I can't help you. And nobody will talk to me even about this to give me any advice. Where I can't even find a federal attorney.
So what you need more of is not a disability attorney. You need like a loan/civil rights attorney and a tax attorney to review it. A loan / lien attorney and a tax attorney.
Okay. But so then you're not saying that you know the answer as to whether or not I can stay there at the house.
Well, you've got some. I don't know. I don't know what Ohio law is when it comes to, like, here's the thing. When people call in, they're like, hey, I'm going to give you 2 sentences, figure out my legal problem. And I sit back and I'm like, well, you know what I mean? Like, and it's Ohio too. Like if it were Florida, you have a bunch of homestead protections that limit the ability of creditors to attach to you. So it's like a totally different game than Ohio. And Ohio is an old school state. So I don't know what the rules up there are, but the bottom line is you need to know, in Ohio, when it comes to inheritance laws, so you really need wills, trusts, and estates attorney to look at this too. If this other person wants to keep it, use it, sell it, what happens to your interest? Because normally the way it works is if people want to sell it, and then people don't want to sell it, then they end up having to sell it via auction, and then everybody gets a piece of whatever percentage they were supposed to get. That's normally how it works. But the problem with your question is there's like this guy that's on the title that doesn't exist. Can you get his name pulled from it? Does he want money? Blah, blah, blah. And then you got the question of, and you have to act quickly too, because every month that you're sitting with this house on your record, when you have your house and the grandmother's house titled to you, you're not eligible for SSI benefits. So you're building an overpayment claim every single month that you don't fix this, which is not good.
Well, this has been like this for 15 years. It was like that before I even got on SSI. I want it now.
But that's not an excuse though. Like when people are like, "Hey, the SSA hasn't figured it out yet," that's not an excuse. That's just you lucked out so far. But I can assure you, at some point, they will catch up to you. They will find it, and they'll hit you with an overpayment. And that's for 15 years of every month of SSI that you've received. That's big. You need a tax attorney. You need a civil rights attorney. You need a wills, trust, and estates attorney to go ahead and look into that, specific to your state.
Tax attorney, a civil rights attorney, and a wills, trust, and estate.
Yeah, wills, trust, and estates, and then obviously some sort of lien-based attorney. But I wouldn't worry as much about the loans and the liens at this point. I would worry more about correcting the transfer of the rights of the house to you, and that being your only house. That would be the number one thing I would focus on first.
Well, see, I stayed here and took care of Mom. I stayed here and took care of Mom. And then they said, "Oh, well, you're not still in that house, are you?" And then, then I hurried up and back to the other house.
Right.
So I don't know. Okay, so how do I pay for all these different types of attorneys?
People always ask me that, like, how do I pay for, the attorney? And the reality is this: law was not set up, and this is very incredibly important. Law was not set up to basically help the American people for free. That's why they created all these subgroups to, county level, state level, federal government level, to pay for or have people that can, at the local levels, go ahead and assist people. But it was never set up as an industry when it was first, coming together to work for those who don't have funds to pay the attorneys. And as a result of that, the only things that you have are local county bar associations. You have the state association, state bar association. You have online groups that can answer questions like avo.com. You have basically free consultations that you can do with attorneys that are, for profit. So those are pretty much the options that you can do to go ahead and basically access free legal knowledge.
So in avo.com,
AVVO, that's where you post a question and then a bunch of attorneys can answer it. And then the attorneys answer it because it, makes them more visible online.
Okay, and I can't really text very well. But yeah, the Bar Association, they said, well, what are you having problems with? We'll give you some names. Give us $30 and we'll give you some names of some attorneys. I have to pay $30 for some names.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, here's the thing. Yeah, a lot of people have this assumption that the legal system is built to be accessible by those who don't have money. But as everybody kind of figures out, it's not. And that's because it's an industry. And law, here's the problem. Law can never end up as a nonprofit based industry, and that is because the cost associated with going to law school is hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you put that student loan on the person, and then on top of that, it's not just any person, it's the top 1% of the 1% of the brain power in America that has to go and take the bar exam or take the LSAT, go to law school, and then 1/3 of the entering class gets kicked out after the first semester. The other third of the entering class gets kicked out after the third semester. So by the fourth semester of a 3-year law school period, there's only 1/3 of the students left. And those students compete to kill each other to make it through and pass the bar and become an attorney. So it's only the top thinkers, which means we're not dealing with a nonprofit existence, which is, essentially those who have lesser workloads, more relaxed lifestyle, but they earn a lot less. So that's why you're never going to see the legal system truly go into this nonprofit identity that I think a lot of people are hoping it will.
Well, the Social Security office should offer some type of assistance, I think.
Though they can't. They can't. Legally, they can't. Legally, they're not allowed to give legal advice. It's the unauthorized practice of law, and they could get them sued. That's the problem. That's what a lot of people don't realize, is that the government agencies exist as a program to supply things to people. But when there's a problem that's a legal issue, like you don't fit into the little slot that gets you to the next thing, the blah, blah, blah. When you have an actual unique situation like yours, where it's a legal problem, then at that point, what you run into is, calling it like it is, you run into a situation where you need somebody that's beyond just what the government provides, which is the program. And then it goes into law. And that's why lawyers are so expensive, because they have to constantly live in known and unknown systems and then help define with the judges and the legislators what the future of the answer to that problem will be. That's law. You want to know what law is? It's real simple. It's creating solutions to unique problems that have not been answered to date. And then when everybody gets really cranky and pissed off between states, between massive funds, the Supreme Court gets involved and then dictates what the law of the land will be. Yep.
Okay.
So, perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ma'am, you have a wonderful, wonderful night.
Thank you, you too. Thank you, Walter.
Thank you so much. All righty. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.
Okay, there's a ton of phone calls on here. I'm going to try and grab the next one, which is this one. Let's see. Okay, perfect, guys. We're going to call the next person real quick and then begin the process. I'm only going to do about 3 or 4 phone calls because it is 10:12 and I'm super tired. I actually had some food poisoning before this. All right. Hi. This is Attorney Walter Knott. We are live on YouTube. Remember to use your fake name throughout this process. Would you like me to answer a specific question, or would you like me to run some hearing questions with you?
I'm wanting to ask specific questions. I own a house. I'm on disability SSDI. My mom owns a house. She's going to be selling my grandmother's 4-plex here in the next few months. She better be. Which then, of course, brings all that money in, so that needs to either be invested in another property that's an income-bearing property. But my question is, can I ever get anything, and can any of this, does everything just skip me and go to my son, or I don't understand. I mean, will my brother just get it? I mean, it's her choice what happens. But the state of Minnesota, and I realize you're not in Minnesota, do I have to be skipped?
Okay, so that it's an incredibly complex question. I'm going to try and I don't know if everybody realizes this, but like the questions we get on here are never simple ones. These are always questions people try to find answers for online, spoke with other attorneys, they couldn't get the answer, and then during the 2 hours of me before I go to sleep. Right. First thing and foremost, no.
And the worst of it, I was a realtor, and it's like I should know these things.
Yeah, but realtors don't really know like massive amounts of real estate law. Realtors are great at selling properties, promoting properties, showing properties for their best, assets and stuff like that. That's a different gig.
We get asked those questions, and then we say, "Oh, I can't answer that, but would you like to look at this house?"
Right, exactly. It's a diversion gig, but first thing is, the thing that dictates whether or not you get skipped is not whether you're on disability benefits. It's whether or not there's a will, or whether it's, a probated estate versus non-probate, etc. Is there a will currently that these assets will go into your name?
Yes.
Okay, so then you won't be skipped. They'll go to you. Now, your next follow-up question is, should I be skipped? And basically,
Exactly.
yeah, you're on SSDI benefits. The trick with SSDI benefits is that you have to go learn about income that's countable versus income that is not countable. And then,
Right.
and so resources don't really matter in the land of SSDI benefits, which means that you could literally win the lottery and not get disability benefits for that month, but the next month, because you had too much income that month, you could be a billionaire.
It's only a month?
Yeah, it's only like if you inherit something that's over SGA, it only affects you for that month on SSDI benefits, which means the next month it all becomes a resource that you have, that you're holding, which means that you could literally be a billionaire on SSDI benefits. So.
Okay. I had a worker once talking something about that, but she didn't talk long enough.
Sure.
And it had to do with the Minnesota lottery. Because it was like, am I going to put my $10 in? I'm like, well, if I'm going to lose a month's worth of stuff if I win, I'm not putting my $10 in.
Right.
Well, we didn't win anyway. But, okay, you've answered my question. You've just made me a very happy woman. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you have a wonderful, wonderful night. And any additional questions, don't be afraid to call in.
Thank you very so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
I know.
So Diane just donated $20, and I really want to thank you. Guys, thank you so much for making these big donations. They helped me. The law firm was not doing great in the transition when COVID happened because, frankly, the way my law firm worked was I would go to offices and work with the low income and the chronically homeless, and I had like 9 office locations I would go to throughout Central Florida, and I was happy. I did my thing. I was happy. COVID hit. I couldn't go to any of them. I was restricted. It was horrible for me. So I couldn't get clients. And then my YouTube channel became the #1 most viewed disability attorney on YouTube. But that's largely because I produce a lot more videos than the average disability attorney or even the main competitor, which is up in Georgia. And so kind of the bottom line was everything changed. And now we have tons of people constantly calling in. In fact, over the next month, you'll get an announcement from me, a specific video that we are not going to be doing in-person meetings, like office meetings for people other than, like if somebody is chronically homeless or chronically low income, we'll still meet with them at homeless help locations to basically get through their forms and stuff like that. But beyond that, we're not going to be using traditional offices for other people because they can just text me a picture of the question that they have a question on, and then I call them and answer it over the phone, and it's done. It's just so weird. It's so weird from what it used to be. I used to be like right next to the person all the time, and now you don't need it. It's actually it's a time waster, but for the chronically homeless, because to be fair, the chronically homeless, a lot of them don't speak and write and understand English, even if it's their main language, at the same level as most people who are, somebody who's worked throughout most of their life. And that's just being fair, Not everybody is meant to go to high school. Not everybody is meant to go to college. Not everybody is meant to get a master's or a doctorate, etc. And I think if we as Americans get away from this idea of everybody has to be shoved into a college situation, I think if we get away from that and we start to look at it as what kind of jobs can we supply to people who aren't able to fit into the traditional academia model, I think we're going to end up with a much happier population. Okay. But let's go through next caller real quick. Again, I just wanted to say thank you to Diane. I wanted to say thank you specifically to Teepaw, who donated the $20 because it's just huge amounts, and I really appreciate it. Let me call one more person for tonight and kind of get the ball rolling. Hopefully it'll be a smaller call, a quicker call, but let's see if we can get through this person real quick and kind of begin the process of answering their question. This will be the last call of the night. Hi, this is Attorney Walter Knott. Howdy, madam. This is Attorney Walter Knott. We are live on YouTube. Please use a fake name throughout the process. Also, would you like me to answer a specific question, or would you like me to go ahead and run hearing questions with you?
Oh, no. The lady basically asked the question. Now, the question is, if you
Oh, I know who that is. I know who you are. Oh, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
If a person try and get, this is kind of rough.
Yeah.
If a person try and get like a little job or whatever on the side, how much are they allowed to make without losing their benefits?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'm doing a video on that, but I'll do a quick summary real quick. What it comes down to is this: if you're on SSI, you got to watch out for 970, or sorry, you got to watch out for 1,000. Hold on, let me pull it up again because I always forget the 2022 SGA amount for 2022. You have to watch out for basically the $1,350 SGA amount. If you earn close to that, it usually triggers a CDR. So if you keep it under 1,000, you'll usually be okay. But the bottom line is there are certain types of jobs that trigger CDRs more than other types of jobs. I'm going to do a video on that. Now, for SSDI benefits, it's trickier. You got this trial work period thing. That doesn't exist in SSI land. But SSDIs, they have a trial work period for 9 months. And if you earn around $970, then that triggers that trial work period. Oh, Shadow's coming up to say hi to everybody. And basically what's happening is this. I know, Shadow, I know. What's happening is this, you know, you use up those 9 months pretty quickly, and then you better have a ticket to work program lined up. But during those 9 months trial work period, you can earn whatever you want. It's going to save you from a CDR, but they get triggered at 970. You become ineligible at 1350. So a lot of people advise people just earn directly below that $970. However, it's not that simple. The reality is that certain jobs will create a situation where basically they're likely to do a CDR to remove benefits if you're earning close to it. So an example of this would be a hybrid job, a job where you're working as an employee and you're working as a self-employed person. Self-employed people run amok of this potential issue, which is that the SSA can attribute income to you even if you didn't earn it. And basically, they can say you earned more even though you didn't actually earn that money, and which then hurts people because all of a sudden they can put them over SGA and kill off the benefits for those months and then claim going back in time that they had an overpayment because they earned too much, which sucks and seems unfair, and it is unfair, but that's how it works. So what I always tell people is this. Yeah.
The person, even though they're working, I know you have it used to have something like a ticket to work program or whatever.
Sure.
But I mean, something that you're working from home, you're working from a company, or you're someone from home, and you're not making that much. And if you can prove you're not making that much, I was told that even though they give you a ticket to work, you are still subject for review if they see that you are working. Because they're thinking, okay, how many hours a day are you sitting up? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? So, you know what I mean?
You are protected from CDR reviews during a ticket to work program. You are protected from CDR reviews during a trial work period. But outside of those, you are fair game. And keep in mind, everybody does not watch their months as to when they're in the programs or when they're using their trial work period. Then they earn a 1 month after, and then instant triggering of CDRs. But I'm going to do a video specifically on how much somebody can earn, what to watch out for, all that stuff. Because there was this other guy, what was it, Disability Digest, and he made a video, but he left out a lot of the most crucial information. And one of the people that I think was actually commenting before that watches him sent me the video and said, "Is this correct?" And I sent back a response with like 6 things that should have been included in that video about how it actually works. So I'll do a video from a lawyer's perspective, and I'll go through how the law is, how it actually works, and what to watch out for, and what triggers the removal of benefits.
Well, I really appreciate that. God bless you. And I enjoyed the gentleman talking, giving his sentiments on things we need to do. It's very perilous times. It is very sad. I just feel like some of the Biden has done that I think is really hurting America. It's not going to hurt Putin because somebody said he's worth over $200 billion. So it's really not going to hurt him. It's going to hurt the citizens of his country, and it's going to hurt Americans.
Have you seen his mansion? I mean, did you see like the tunnel going to the beach and all that stuff? Like, I mean, he must be more wealthy than even the the wealthy families of old, the Rothschilds and the Yales and the and
he is very, very wealthy. And the thing is, he's buddies with China. And my concern is if China invades Taiwan, which they will have control of the chip, which we use for cars and everything else.
Yeah.
Then also, real quick, China is tying up with Africa now. They're becoming Africa's best buddies. And so that's another problem because now Africa used to make the cocoa beans and different things of that nature. Not make it, but they would send it to the Swiss. Now they're telling them, Africa is telling the Swiss, no more cocoa. We're going to make it in our own country. But the China is aiding them by opening up factories. So a lot of the rich resources like rubber, diamonds, gold, and everything that comes from Africa, China is now joining hands with them. So what's going to happen is the American dollar is going to drop, and then theirs is going to go up. That's what's going to happen. And then everybody's going to be forced to decide. We have no other choice. If China's controlling everything, they're not going to have any other choice. So on that note, I'm going to let you. I'm not going to hold you up, but that's all I want to say.
Would you mind preparing something on what's going on with China and Africa? Because my greatest fear is not Russia. It's never been Russia. It's never had anything to do with Russia. My greatest fear is that I think over $20 billion was invested over the past 20 years by China into Africa. And as a result of that, when people in America think of Africa, they think of like this, little town, not much money, Kalashnikovs, aka, all that kind of stuff. But the reality is that they are mega cities there now, and it's becoming a massive influx of trade. And essentially, when China has Africa in cahoots with them to produce products in the future, the United States financially loses massively because either the United States has to produce items itself, or it has to basically find some other nation to do it for cheap. And China set Africa up to do it for them. The U.S. has no alternative other than South America. So it's just like, but if you could prepare something, I'd love to hear it on the next live. But my doggies are barking at me. I will catch you a little bit later.
Well, God bless you.
Yeah.
And you have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So she actually hit on something that is my greatest fear going forward. And it's something that nobody really talks about, and it should be more important. China, when I was in my master's, my MBA, was making huge, massive $1 billion, when $1 billion was like unthinkable. It was unthinkable back then, but they were making $1 billion investments into Africa. And they set up Africa to be essentially a production zone where they were manufacturing and farming massive amounts of raw materials, which they've now set up Africa to successfully be able to provide those raw resources to China, which means that China now has the raw material from Africa and the production capability of Africa and the cheap labor of Africa, along with China's cheap labor, production capabilities, warehouses, processing, administrative functions, etc., which means China will be able to take all that stuff that we buy from Walmart, make it even cheaper coming from Africa, and not allow the US to have any of it. And she's right, the chips aren't just the cars. The chips are the computer. You add a screen and a keyboard to the chip with a hard drive, you got a computer and some RAM, etc. But the point is, if we don't have computers, it all goes dark very fast. All right, guys, I'll catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful night. Enjoy yourself, have fun, and I'll catch you a little bit later from there. And one of the things I wanted to do, guys, is kind of figure out, well, we'll talk about that next time, but remember to like, subscribe, leave 5-star reviews. Thank you so much. And remember, every Thursday, 8 to 10 p.m., we answer questions from people, but we have little intros and stuff like that. So if you have any questions, every Thursday, 8 to 10 p.m., I donate 2 hours. I'll catch you later. Have a wonderful night. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.